Next up, Scarlet Lane Brewing. Is Elise Lane floating around somewhere? Elise, come on up. Talk to us about Scarlet Lane Brewing. Yeah. You got 3 minutes on the clock here, and your clicker is here.
Hi, I'm Elise Lane from Scarlet Lane Brewing. We are near Indianapolis, about 20 minutes northeast out of Indianapolis. We are trained in Oregon. We learn to do what we love in Oregon, but we're from Indiana, and we wanted to take that passion for beer, community, and life in Oregon and take it back to Indiana and make Indiana a place that we're proud to be in and from. We launched our brand about a year and a half ago. We're really excited, but it took 3 years to build this entire idea. In those 3 years, I was perfecting my idea of what I wanted to brew. I was working on my marketing ideas, and I was working with our team to figure out finances. We went all in, and so you'll see we're broke as the owners, and anybody starting a new brewery, you know how that goes. Female-owned, female co-brewed, and female-backed. This was somewhat of a happy coincidence. The first beer that I had that made me want to brew a home brew, I went to a beer bar in Bend, Oregon. I drank something, and it just changed me. And I asked if I could speak with the brewer, and they said, she's not here today. And I was like, what? Okay. And so I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this. And so with the passion that I had and with the ideas that we had a lot of women that came in and wanted to back us. We launched our entire brewery with a $550,000. I will get to our size. There are 3 original founders, Nick Serves, Doug Sheets, and myself. And then we have recently hired on a new head brewer, so I have help in the brewery, which is fantastic and exciting. A friend of ours from Ninkasi Brewing, he was one of the beginning brewers there. So, it's not going. So we brew in a 15-barrel brew house. We started out with 3 30s. We now have 6 30 fermenters, and then we have 2 30 brights. Draft priority was always number 1. We wanted to make sure that our market wanted our beer in package before we made it in package. We self-distributed ourselves for 6 months, and then AB came to us and they said, hey, we want to start marketing you. So we work with 7 of the 25 AB distributors in Indiana currently. We have 3 flagships. We have the Dorian Stout, which is a rotational stout. It's always Dorian, but it's always something new. We have our Vivian Red IPA that marries that Northwest style with that Indiana malt. And then we have our Lenore Dry Hop Pale Ale. Our top sellers are always our Dorian Coconut, our Dorian Espresso, and then Vivian, our plain Dorian, and then Lenore Dry Hop Pale Ale. You can get a theme there. Dorian's a big thing. Our most talked about, again, you're going to see that Dorian Stout and then a braggot that we played out last year. So if you look at our brand, our brewery is named after Scarlet, who is our dog, and you'll see her right there in the middle. She was a tenacious little pup, and we loved her dearly. And you'll see with the marketing, you pull out everything out of that major spot right there. Our handles are the lanterns, you have our shield there, and you have our entire crest that gives who we are. It's a little Tim Burton meets Ed Gorey. And here are a few examples of what it looks like. This was our last collaboration, and it's heaven and hell. And it just gives a little bit more of that kind of style that we work into.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice job. There you go.
Hello.
All right. So a rotating flagship and a stout nonetheless. What do you guys make of that? We don't see too many stout flagships or rotating flagships. Interesting concept. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, it's cool that it kind of changes. You can have, reminiscent of you think of like all the different versions of Victory at Sea or Speedway Stout, where you have a beer that everybody loves that then you make all these different versions of constantly. So I think it's something, that is well established in this area and certainly transferable to other markets. I don't see why. It's a nice beer, nice, real dry, roasty flavor.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. We decided to go with a rotational stout, 1, because I'm obsessed with stouts and I wanted to make all stouts. They told me no. And then 2, because we see this rotation heavy handle thing that's going on where those handles are always rotating. And we decided we'll rotate it for you. Just stick with Scarlet Lane and we'll figure it out.
Interesting. Ben, what do you think about the beer?
Oh, I think the beer's great. I would caution as you do start to grow with the rotational concept and wholesaler management
Right.
of that can be a complete nightmare. Coming from experience of having a rotational IPA out there for a while, it becomes very difficult. As long as when you're small, easily manageable, but once that concept starts to cascade out, it definitely becomes more difficult to manage.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge when, we heard it earlier today, keeping things simple for wholesalers and not having a flagship to rely on can make that difficult. Carmen, what do you think about the scalability of an idea like this?
Well, I'll echo what Ben just said. I mean, we've tried rotate our SKUs ourselves, and they've been really difficult to manage. What I would say is that look for a red thread, like even within the branding and within the product mix and everything that you're working on. All stouts is kind of crazy, but it's kind of crazy and it's a red thread.
Yeah.
So just look for that. It seems a little bit schizophrenic right now. You're trying to do a lot of different things, and I think that there are a lot of really solid stories. So find the one that is the most real.
And on that, Michael, I was going to ask you, certainly a lot of pieces to the story. Does it all fit for you? Does everything tie together for you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great alignment across the elements. I think that slide where you showed where they all come from it showed some of the thinking behind it, which is great. I think the challenge that you'll have to get over, I think you're more than up to with this particular brand is the commercializability of it when you go to secondary packaging, even showing us that format you had with the wrap around it.
Right.
I think showed me that you're already starting to run up against that a little bit. I think a great brewery to look at for something it's got an intentionally sort of amateurish quality to the visuals. Is somebody like Off Color out of Chicago
Right,
who has this
yep.
weird sort of sketchy thing, but they've also found a way to make it very commercializable and readable on the shelf.
Right.
And that's a really hard thing to do with a brand like this. But otherwise, I was really intrigued by how well aligned all the elements were.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for the feedback and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.